Welcome to the Pet Loss Companion. I'm Dolan-Del Vecchio. I'm here with my friend and co-author Nancy Saxton-Lopez, and this is a program that we do live on Facebook and YouTube every Thursday from 6 p.m. Eastern Time till about 6:30. And it is a way for us to expand the reach of the work that we did in the book that we wrote that's called The Pet Loss Companion, Healing Advice from Family Therapists Who Lead Pet Loss Groups. This program allows us to have a dialogue with an audience who are people who are generally involved with the process of grieving a loss, maybe in the beginning, maybe somewhere along their journey of healing. And a lot of what we do on this program is we read the stories that people have sent to us, the emails that people have sent to us about their loss and about where they are in their healing process. And so we encourage you to send us a story of your own, and you can reach me at kenddv@gmail.com. You can reach Nancy at nsaxtonlopez at csmpc.com. That's nsaxtonlopez at csmpc.com.
And we want to make sure that you let us know if you want us to share or not. That would
yes,
be
if you
would don't, like that's fine too.
If you'd like us to share, we know that that's very helpful to people who are listening and perhaps reading our correspondence with you as well. But if you'd prefer not, then just let us know, and one or both of us will respond to you in either case. Everything I'm saying in the beginning is in the description that accompanies the program, whether you're watching it live or whether you're watching or listening to an audio or video replay. And you can support our work in a number of different ways. You can read all of our email correspondence with those who have given us permission to share it on our Substack. And there's also a small subscription fee for that. So it's $5 a month. And that's a way of supporting the program. You can support us through a donation on Venmo or PayPal or a monthly subscription on Spotify. We don't expect you to. We do this really because we know that it's helpful to people, and we do it as a labor of love. But of course, it doesn't hurt to have a little bit of income as well. And so also this program is a friend of Dakin Humane Society in Springfield, Massachusetts. Dakin is a multi-service shelter, adoption, rescue center, and they do all kinds of programming that's helpful when it comes to enriching the human-animal bond. And one of the programs that they offer is a pet loss support group over Zoom that I facilitate once a month. It's on the second Tuesday of the month, and it runs 6 o'clock to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It is free of charge, but there is the request that you RSVP for it. So the RSVP link is attached in the description. It's a really interesting meeting because people can Zoom and do Zoom from all over the country and all over the world. So we get all kinds of interesting, different perspectives that really is very helpful to many, many people. If you RSVP and then you decide that you can't make it, please send me a note and let me know that, because we'll reopen the participation to other people. We do close it at a certain number. Actually, we close it at 50, and we usually get 25 or so people present. But we want to make sure that it's open to as many people as could possibly use it. And also, finally, if you find value in this program, please subscribe. If you haven't already, subscribe on YouTube. The link for doing so is in the description. And if you find the program helpful, if you leave a comment or you give it a thumbs up, that also helps the visibility of the program when other people are looking for support for their loss of an animal companion. And finally, we'd like you to know that we have an affiliate relationship with a business called Bereave. Bereave makes these really wonderfully crafted granite plaques that are very solid, and we've
they're beautiful.
got an example. We got a sample of them because we certainly didn't want to be promoting something when we didn't know the quality, but they do a great engraving. It's the kind of thing that you would have at a memorial garden or a gravesite, or maybe inside where you keep mementos. And Nancy is showing the example. And if you use the link that's in the description of our program, we get a little bit of the price back from your purchase. So it's another way that you can support the work that we're doing. And so, Nancy, want to get us started for today?
Yes, we have some really beautiful and, of course, always heartbreaking stories tonight from two really amazing pet moms. And one is from Heidi about her honey. And she's from Australia, I believe, right, Ken?
Mm-hmm.
And one is from Lydia about her Theodore. Honey's story is on the longer side. Lydia's is on the shorter side. However, they both have all those sentiments, and they both share the love that is so important to them that they are now missing. So I'm going to start with Heidi and Honey. And she says, Honey's story, my best friend, my housemate, my child. Dear Ken and Nancy, thank you for your kind souls, this podcast, and your support group. I'm from, it's Melbourne. And I've been tuning into your show in search of some kind of comfort after my recent, sudden, unexpected, and traumatic loss of my dog, my soul dog, Honey, on May 27th. My almost 12-year-old French bulldog, who was my absolute world. My heart is aching and torn apart. There's an enormous honey-shaped hole in it that only she can fill, a river pouring from my eyes, and my brain is analyzing and agonizing over everything and every little moment and decision of the weekend that is now my nightmare. Now, this was, of course, really hit me because Honey looks a lot like my Ellie. And so I was glad that I can read that. Honey's story is a long one. And I apologize, but I hope so much that you still have time to share our story on your show. After making the big, well-thought-out decision to get our first dog, we adopted Honey, a nearly 5-year-old retired show dog, looking for her forever home where she could be the center of attention and not ever have to share her toys again. We brought her home after she ever so excitedly and willingly jumped into my car without a care in the world, much to her previous owner's shock. Honey purposely and beautifully came into my life at just the right time, unknowingly at the time, 2 months before my boyfriend of 7 years walked away in an instant. I always believed that she came into my life specifically at that time to help me through that horrendous time that I was about to go through. My little angel got me outside when I didn't want to do anything, but she needed to be walked, so we walked. And from then on, our special bond began. Just shy of 7 years, we lived together, just Honey and I'd have it no other way, except that I wish for a few more years. I didn't want to be with anyone but her, and she's all I needed, my best friend. I'd race home from work and couldn't wait to see her face and just spend all my time with her. In the early days when I worked as a florist, I was lucky enough to bring her to work with me. She brought me joy to all who walked into the shop, and she had many fans who would visit her. In recent days, in a different job, I only work 4 days a week because I didn't want to be away from her any more than that. I also split my 4 working days over the week so I didn't have to leave her home alone for 4 in a row. I didn't want to do that to her. She came everywhere with me that I could take her, cafes with friends, hardware stores, beach, food truck, parks, markets, and I never went to my parents' house for a visit without her. She was my sidekick. She loved going in a car, and she was my car buddy, even if I was ducking up into the shops to get some takeout for dinner or fill the car with petrol. She would sit in the car seat in the front seat and come along for the adventure. Some work days she would go to Grandma and Grandpa's for the day. She knew when we were going there, and she'd love it too. She was my parents' grand dog, and I felt so happy that she was there for the day. Honey loved everyone, kids, dogs, people. She insisted on stopping on a walk because everyone who passed had to say hello to her. She even didn't quite get it when a dog clearly wasn't keen on saying hello to her. Barking in her face, she still wanted to say hello. She liked to investigate prams as they went by because she knew that they contained children toys and food, even attempting to take the toys for herself. She became an expert present unwrapper, as every year on her birthday, I would wrap presents for her and make her little doggy cake. She would pop up on her party hat and her birthday girl top. She loved it. She also had a slight, sassy, cheeky side where she thought it was appropriate to take tennis balls out of other dogs' mouths at the beach, and most dogs were so shocked by this. She slept every night along beside me on my bed and even figured out how good pillows were to rest her head on. Anyone who knew me knew that Honey was my other half. They knew she meant the world to me. My Honey turned 11 on September 23rd, 2023, even though I told her at 10 she had to stop and be 10 forever. In October, we found a scary lump that turned out to be an MCT tumor, a mast cell tumor. It was removed by a specialist with good wide margins and came back as very low grade, unlikely to come back. I recovered from the stress of it all and enjoyed life with my girl as usual. In January, I got a gut-wrenchingly found another lump, this time a sarcoma on her inner wrist area near her front paw on the same leg, a trickier and scarier spot than before. It was removed by the same specialist surgeon this time with only narrow margins, as much as they could get. The recovery on this one was much harder and stressful on both of us. I wonder if I did the right thing in having it removed. The results for this one came back as a shock, a rare high-grade synovial sarcoma that they didn't have a lot of experience and knowledge on, and they said it was likely to reoccur. It sent me into a panic. I was so stressed and scared and fearful of the sea coming back and losing my girl. I couldn't control my brain. Now that I've learned about anticipatory grief, I feel like at the time I was in this grief a little bit. After what now feels like far too long to be in that state of mind, upset and living in fear of it returning, looking back now, I feel like I wasted precious time being so sickly worried. I then chose to change my mindset, and I spoke and thought only positive words every day to my girl. I wrote it down and even stuck it on the fridge. Every morning we would have a cuddle and talk about being blessed and grateful for every day, and that she would defy the odds, and how her 12th birthday was coming up in September, and it was going to be a big birthday bash with a purple doggy cake and presents to unwrap. I took upon the mindset of live like Honey and live every day. I had also decided in my mind that if the cancer came back, I wasn't going to put her through any more surgery. With the help of two naturopathic vets and a homeopath, she also started a very thorough anti-cancer protocol of natural herbs and supplements to boost her immunity and provide antioxidants to keep the cancer suppressed and away. She was such a good girl with all the things I would give her to put in her food. She was going to hydrotherapy to help with a leg that now had 2 surgeries on it. She loved hydrotherapy, mainly for the trees. She was healing well, such a happy little girl. What was her final week, she was doing so well, happy and running around playing with her toys. She had also just had a checkup with a surgeon who was really happy with how the site was going, and also her herbal vet checked her over that week and was also really happy with how she was going. On that Friday night, she got up suddenly from sleeping next to me on my bed. She wanted to get down, was unsettled, panting, moving around the house. She seemed possibly in pain. I didn't want to come back to bed. She didn't want to come back to bed, kept going out to the toilet and standing in the cold. She really wasn't herself and seemed off. The next day, we went to the vet for a check. All of a sudden, she didn't want to be examined, screamed in pain the minute she tried to look at her, check her in her mouth or around her head. The vet and I were so shocked. As the vet was about to close, we were sent home after she had a pain relief injection and to take some anti-inflammatories at home to see how it went. At home, she still didn't really seem to settle much, and I couldn't get any food or oral medications into her for relief. The next morning, I took her to the emergency center because it was a Sunday and the previous vet was closed to see if she could get another pain relief injection because I just couldn't get anything into her and I worried that she was in pain. They tried to assess her again, and I heard her scream from out of the back. My heart sank, and I felt sick. They suspected, at a guess, it could be a slipped disc. I was given options to admit her or take her home on more pain relief to watch and see and return to the normal vet the next day. All very overwhelming and stressful. She came home after some more pain relief and a further fentanyl patch on her leg for pain relief to kick in 12 hours later once the other pain meds were off. She ate her lunch, and I was directed to put her in a small playpen area to be safe. She seemed relaxed and calm. I was very happy she was eating and now getting some other medication into her. I felt like she might be on the mend, thankfully. I watched her over her for the day while doing things around the house around her, but later that night, as we attempted to turn up the lights and go to bed, I was sleeping right next to her playpen area. She got up and started panting really bad and seemed unsettled and wanted to get out of the playpen. I got frustrated because I didn't know why the pain relief patch wasn't working by now and why she seemed distressed again. I ended up ringing the emergency place, and they said to bring her down and take the patch off and see if the breathing calmed down. I instantly blamed the patch. When we got there around midnight, she went straight out the back with the nurse to remove the patch. I thought at the time that they were just going to take it off and we would go home. But then, while she was still out the back, they called me into a different room and offered me more options to either take her home, to watch her breathing closely for the next few hours, and to bring her back if it didn't settle down, or admit her for them to watch over her breathing. So overwhelmed and stressed, I decided to admit her because I thought that they were the professionals and maybe they are the best to monitor her. I then had to pay half of the bill. I went home in a bit of a daze almost, and I thought I would pick her up in the morning. I thought her breathing was settled down. I got home around 2 a.m. and I put my head down. However, about 1 hour later, my phone rang, waking me up. I felt sick instantly. I was shaking. The vet said her breathing had not calmed down and they need to look at sedating her to see if that will work. I immediately said, I need to come down. They said, be quick. I raced down there in panic with her favorite toy in my hand. I was 10-15 minutes away. When I got there, they had just made her slightly sedated and she was in an oxygen cage. I opened the door very briefly to see her, pat her, putting my face near hers and asking her to get better. But I was very quick in that moment because my thought was that I didn't want her not to get the oxygens. So I was very quick to close the cage door so she could keep breathing it in. And at the same time, the vet was trying to talk to me and ask me all these things about trachea tubes and intubation. And I was so overwhelmed. They said they would see how she went for a bit longer being sedated and then might seem to need to intubate to further try that. So I said, okay. And I went and stayed in my car outside for hours until the next morning, just in case they called me like the last time. I went back inside around 7:30 a.m. and waited in the waiting room until around 10 when they finally called me in after the changeover of the vet's shift to say that she was intubated and under anesthetic, but unfortunately wasn't showing signs of getting better or being able to breathe normally on her own when they tried to wean her off oxygen and the anesthetic, and she was very reliant on the oxygen. It was all very confusing at this stage as it started with some kind of pain and now was all about her breathing. A CT scan was ordered to try to get some kind of answers. I waited for the CT results at home. The CT findings came back pretty clear, which made it pretty confusing. No cancer masses seen, no slip disc, and nothing caught in her throat. Blood test was fine too. They told me there was some fluid on the lungs and mucus buildup, possibly infection or the beginnings of pneumonia, some changes in the lungs. And when they looked down her throat, they diagnosed her with laryngeal paralysis, which they then offered me to talk to a surgeon next for a possible tie-back surgery for her airways. I then had to wait for him to call, and all this time Honey was still under anesthesia, and this bothered me more and more. The surgeon finally called and explained the possible surgery, but asked me to take into consideration Honey's current worsening condition going into surgery. Her blood pressure was dropping, oxygen levels dropping, and I was told her body basically was shutting down and not responding on its own. The surgery didn't seem like a simple option for my Honey anymore. They explained she is at a big risk of not making it through the surgery, and if she did, she may still be in the ICU for days and possibly still not be able to be woken up to breathe on her own. They said there is a very real potential in creating other ongoing post-op problems for her after fixing the initial airway problem. At this point, given her age and her condition, surgery no longer seemed like an option or something that I should put her through.
I then felt like all of a sudden I was faced with no real other choice but to say goodbye to my best friend in that place. I was in shock. How can this be? By now, I felt like I was running in some kind of autopilot mode. I desperately then asked if I now have to say goodbye, could she be woken up slightly out of anesthetic to a more sedate level so she could know that I was there and I could hold her to the very end. They said it wasn't possible. My heart broke again. That it could be too traumatic for Honey if she couldn't get enough oxygen. She may pass in a horrible way in that moment, struggling to breathe. She told me it's like her body is almost deciding for us, and that I was making a brave decision, that it was kinder to say goodbye while she was under anesthetic. This devastated me. I wanted her to know her mom was there. I then asked if I could spend some time with her in a private room, and initially they said no because she was hooked up to too many machines, and implied that I was to have to say goodbye in the main veterinary area where she was. But then the vet was able to wheel her into a separate room for me with her machines. On another cruel level, there was a frustratingly loud karate class happening above the vet clinic that night, heavily banging and crashing on the floor, which was absolutely horrific for me as I was expecting to say goodbye to my best friend at that time. Not only when she was under anesthetic, but also in this non peaceful place. I was devastated and crushed. I spent some time with her, talking to her, crying, giving her many kisses, and touching her ears one last time, telling her how much she meant to me, and wishing her a happy birthday because I felt like she was close enough. I pray and hope that she could hear me somehow and knew that I was there with her. I hate it so much that I'm stuck with that goodbye for us in my head. This was not the passing I wanted for her at all, and somehow now I have to live with that, and I hate it. I wish so much she wasn't under anesthetic. It's just so not fair. I wanted to hold her, for her to know I was there, and for her to feel my love and safety. What I had actually hoped for her one day in my mind was that after she grew much older and couldn't go on anymore, to be at home after some final days of showering her in love and all her favorite things, soft, calming music, and me laying with her, and a nice vet to come to the house and peacefully let her pass over. I felt like that's what she deserved, not what we went through, though. I've screamed, cried, and yelled at myself and cried out to Honey to say how stupid and sorry I was about everything. I feel like I let her down. I wish that I remembered in that moment when she was admitted to ask to see her, give her a big hug and kiss before I went to wait at home. I wanted her to know her mom was there after her, offer her comfort. I'm devastated and so angry at myself that I didn't, and that I even went home at all in that moment. I don't even really remember driving home that well. I should have waited in the car or waiting room instead because I feel like I probably could have seen her then before they made her sedate. And I feel like a bad mom because what type of mom goes home if their child has bad breathing? I'm so lost at myself and so disappointed for this very specific moment over and over again in my head. I've remembered once before to do it in the past when she stayed overnight in February for a post-op infection. I asked them to see her before I left, and I did, and I went home and thankfully picked her up in the morning. So that's why I can't understand my brain this time and why on earth I did not think to do that. I just can't understand myself. And I don't know how to be able to live with that. When everyone says to me, you did everything you could, that's when I feel like, no, I didn't. And I could have and should have done that for her and me, which was completely in my control. And I can't blame anyone else. I believe I would have felt somewhat less guilt right now knowing she saw me and felt my love and comfort before I went home to wait and before I left her there. I also wish I got there quicker to see her before they first made her slightly sedate and on oxygen. I wish I spent more time in this moment too and wasn't as quick as I was because I didn't know that was the last time I was to see her before she was, then to be fully anesthetized and I would be saying goodbye. I worry what if she was scared being in that place and she felt like I wasn't there. How do I live with that? I also hate now that I took her to that place. What if they weren't the best place to take her? What if I went somewhere else and she got better care and they had a nicer, quieter room? What if they prompted me to see her before I left? I also feel shitty because the last 4 days leading up to it all were stressful for her and I. It wasn't like we were able to prioritize calm and cuddles together because we didn't know what was going on for her. Suspect slipped disc and she was unsettled. I was trying to medicate her and she was getting annoyed at me at times. Her and I were both on edge, and I hate that. That is the last days we had, and I hate that on Sunday I had her in that playpen while I was monitoring her moving around the house instead of laying with her all day by her side. I feel so much sadness, guilt, and blame that I screwed up and let her down in these moments, and I can't seem to get it all off my mind, and I can't blame anyone else or take it all back. On top of that, I miss my beautiful girl so much it hurts. I wasn't prepared for this, not ready at all to come home without my girl, and I am just devastated. I don't wish any emergency situation on anyone. I'm having such a hard time with this. She was perfectly fine 1 minute playing with her toys, and then all of a sudden she wasn't herself. I just don't understand. I really felt like she had a few more years left in her yet. And I think that's part of the reason this is so hard to accept or understand. I didn't see her slowly decline and age. This all happened so quickly. It's so hard to accept or process. And why I always think maybe I could have done something differently in those last few days to prevent this from happening somehow, or maybe did something wrong to lead to this. I just can't believe I can't hold her or touch her ever again. And all I have is photos to stare at. I would give anything for one more day with her. I worry also that in the few months before, when I was so fearful of the cancer coming back and so afraid of the thought of losing her, I worry that somehow I manifested this nightmare for us. I find myself feeling jealous of people who get to say goodbye in their own terms, in their homes and in peace, who get to give them a last weekend of all their favorite things and places and shower them in love and cuddles, even though I know that it's also hard and comes with its own challenges and sadness too. Every morning I wake without her right next to me in bed. I instantly feel anxious and that I'm living in a nightmare. I feel so broken. I miss her so much. It hurts my heart and soul. My whole life has come to a halt and been tipped upside down. My purpose and my routine. I miss her everywhere I go, the house, my parents' house, the car, the streets we walk, the cafes, driving past her hydro place. Each night now, I come home from work and instead of being greeted by her happy little face that lit up my heart and world with so much joy and love, I now light her candle on her memorial near her ashes next to my bed. I also wear some of her ashes in a gold love heart necklace every day. At bedtime, I then move her ashes onto her side of the bed and I fall asleep holding on to her very first teddy I bought for her, which now has her little jumper and collar wrapped around it. It still smells like her. I just want her to come back now. Warm regards, Heidi.
Oh, what a story, right? The guilt that this poor Heidi has.
And all of the woulda, shoulda, couldas, why didn't I? Why didn't I see it? Why didn't I? It's so typical of
Yeah.
what happens to us
Yes.
after we have the loss of our beloved friend. It's so very typical. And she lays it all out. And all of it is totally not it's not right. She did everything she could. I mean, we're going to say some of the things other people have said, which is she did all the right things, and yet, of course, now she's plagued by
That's
all of
right.
this woulda, shoulda, coulda. Why didn't I? And she added a new layer of self guilting, where she says maybe my anxiety about her illness
Manifested this.
on brought it on,
I
manifested.
know.
So we find we're exquisitely talented
Yeah.
at finding ways to blame ourselves,
Yep.
to emotionally torture ourselves. And this is the kind of thing that people who have such extraordinary love and care and give so much attention to their animal companions, their animal family members, this is what happens to some of them.
Yeah.
And it is absolutely not true that she that she didn't provide great care. She provided amazing care,
That's right.
and none of her recriminations are rational. Grief is totally irrational.
Irrational, right?
She
She's
dem-
angry. She's angry at herself. She's
yes,
angry
yes.
at, the world. I mean,
And
anger is another feeling that we
yes,
have in
it's
grief, right?
it's part
She
of it.
is so mad and upset. She
And
wants her back.
she also sent us. We'll show you the picture of Honey in her
Yeah.
casket. It's a beautiful send off that she gave
Yes.
for a little
It
dog.
was beautiful.
And I mean, it just shows you how much love there
Yes.
was for this little soul. And the thing I want to say to Heidi is you did an incredible job. You took
Yes.
amazing care of this little dog. She was the light of your life, and you were undoubtedly the light of her life. And as we've said to many people, the fact that you cared for her every day of her life and that you loved her and she slept next to you, and when she wasn't well, you slept next to her playpen, and none of all of that is what matters. The
Right.
last little bit, the trauma of loss
Yeah.
was a tiny was a moment, a blip in a beautiful life that you gave her.
Well, the other thing is too, is I think she did have a lot of expectation about how it would be right
Yeah,
at the end of her life.
yeah,
And we know, and we've seen this over and over again in the stories we get, that
yeah,
all of a sudden something happens and then
yeah,
you have to make a decision, right? It's
yeah.
and then you can't think, you can't,
No, and that's
right?
the whole
You
this all
you
this stuff
can't,
about you're when you're that stressed, you're likely to be able to do much of anything, and your
right,
cognition is so, like, the fact that she's like, I should have given her one last hug. I should have, that's all hindsight. That's the way
right.
hindsight works. But in the moment, our head
You
is
can't
spinning.
think
I
straight.
mean,
You're
we're
so
so anxious
emotionally
that yeah,
exploding,
we're so
right?
anxious that we're disorganized in the
Yeah,
way we think. And you know, and we don't have control over this.
no,
I
we
remember
don't.
when my Isabel died, and Abigail was my other chihuahua, was very supportive of me. I was alone. My husband was traveling, and I made her promise that she would live 2 more years. She lived 2 more months.
Yeah,
She couldn't fulfill that promise. It's kind of like Heidi imagined that they
right,
would make this next birthday and maybe they'd
right.
have years together. I'm sure they both wanted that, but
The other
forces
thing
well
I want,
beyond our control had other plans.
exactly. The one thing I also want to tell Heidi is she knew you were there.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
She knew you were there, even if
Mhm.
she was anesthetized. She knew.
Yeah,
This was her time. This was her journey, and she absolutely knew that you were
yep,
there.
yep. So
Yeah.
we want to thank Heidi for sharing,
Yes.
and let's just quickly move on to
Lydia, you've got Lydia,
Lydia.
right? It's
So this is
tribute.
Lydia's Theodore.
Oh, he's so cute.
He was so cute. And here's her note. Hi, Ken. Thank you for the beautiful podcast. Can you please share the link of when I can sign up for the pet loss group, which I sent to her? I'm struggling from the loss of my boy of 14 and a half years. And then she writes, here's the tribute I wrote to him. 14 years ago, a little puff of a white dog changed my life. I had just turned 22 and I paid for him with the money I earned cat sitting. I picked him up at a flea market from a woman in Dundelian who had 2 teeth. I named him Theodore after my favorite president. He was by my side when I graduated, started my career, lost grandparents, made new friends, moved to new apartments, met Matthew, got engaged, married, and bought our first home. People in every neighborhood we lived in knew me as the girl with the little white dog who was always being pushed around in a stroller. He helped me meet so many amazing people. In the last few years, he was my companion and comfort through losing my brother and beloved dad, infertility, and multiple miscarriages. When my dad was dying, Theodore snuggled up with him in his hospital bed. In August, he was with me when I got pregnant and with my take home baby. He was there when I threw up every night and had multiple bleeding scares and swelled up from sky-high blood pressure. As the life inside me grew, he started to decline. A few days before my induction, he nearly died and was resuscitated at his vet's office. We brought him home in tears. When he miraculously improved, we knew he was waiting to meet his brother. For
Mhm.
almost 10 weeks, Theodore slept by Everett's head all day. He licked him on the mouth and helped with tummy time. We bought him a twin stroller so Theodore would never miss out on a walk. People would stop us and ask if I had twins.
And
He
Lydia,
was
you did.
kind of. He watched me fall in love and become a human mom, and he wasn't jealous, not even a little bit. Thursday morning, he couldn't breathe, and we knew it was time. In the living room where we shared millions of cuddles, I kissed the face of the little dog I have kissed millions of times for the last time as he went to join my dad. Thank you, Theodore, for the best 14 years of unconditional love. I will see you when I get there. Really,
And
really,
both of these little dogs, right, Honey and Theodore, were your soul dogs. They were heart dogs, right?
so
They were
beautiful.
rocks for
Yeah.
these women. And it's so incredibly devastating when they go.
And here what Lydia is telling us is what we hear from so many people, that this animal companion lived through this very important season of my
Yes.
life. All of these important developmental changes in my life,
Mhm.
this little friend was with me for. And when we lose them, it's like losing a piece of all of our
Yes, of
that
us.
era, that whole
Right,
time that we
right.
shared, and making us realize that everything changes. And so it's the loss of not only this beautiful little dog, but it's a point where we're caused to think about all of what's happened in our life over these many years together. Very poignant and beautiful story that she sent.
Yes. And we thank Lydia so much, and we thank Heidi so much. The love that comes out of those two stories
Yeah.
is
Yep.
palpable, right? You feel it. You
Yep.
just feel it.
Yep.
And of course, Heidi with her guilt, and we hope that Heidi, we've helped you a little bit through that.
Yeah, I'm going to just tell Heidi, you have no right to feel that guilty. It's not going to help, but I just wanted to tell you that. And I hope it helped this much, just a little bit even, because you do not deserve to feel all that guilt. And hopefully it changes quite a bit over the next little bit of time.
And Lydia, it was such a beautiful tribute. It really
Absolutely.
was, to your Theodore. And he is up there with your dad. So,
Yeah.
and your brother.
So also, we just want to reiterate, if you find this program helpful, please do subscribe on YouTube, because it affects the algorithm in a way that it helps people who are looking for pet law support to find us more readily. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care. See you next week. Okay.